Welcome to the Mega Blast Podcast. I'm your host, Jason McDonald. My goal is to get to the truth through conversation. The Mega Blast Podcast is produced by Arts and Opinion, an online journal housed at the Archives of Canada. Visit us at artsandopinion.com. I hope you enjoy today's guest. So, welcome back, Liz Hodgson. How you doing?
I'm excellent, thanks, Jason. How are you?
I'm fantastic. As I was just saying to you off microphone, I'm so happy to be alive. I can't tell you how great my life is, honestly. I don't know if it's because my mom died last year. I don't know if I think I told you that.
I remember.
And I think it colored the whole year. At the end of last year, I started to feel so good about just when Christmas was coming, and then I went to the Dominican Republic, and then when I got back from the Dominican Republic, I had this incredible thing happen to me. This person come, and everything. Just all these things sort of, and I was on the plane flying to the Dominican Republic, and I was looking out at the snow, and I was seeing the oratory as we were taking off. And have you ever heard that Louis C.K. routine about air travel?
Mm-hmm.
About how people should just be screaming with joy I started to cry. I was like, and I'm having all these experiences like this these days, just because life is so amazing, really, for all the suffering and problems, right?
You're euphoric.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess so. And so, just to answer your question, life is great. I could almost not ask to have a better life.
That is fantastic.
So what about you? Let's hear the story of suffering, man. Now that we've heard the euphoria.
It's always good to remember that there is an extraordinary amount of suffering in the world.
That's true.
But
that's true. Yeah.
You or me or anybody is not. Wait, let me see if I get this straight. Our suffering doesn't alleviate anybody else's suffering. So you might as well be happy. And I always felt like happiness was a choice.
It's interesting how, life is made up of a lot of suffering, and I'm suffering a lot for different reasons as well. I mean, there's different things about my life that are, my mom dying last year, there's some suffering, right? Okay. But on the other hand, for all the suffering, there's also these amazing things. Life is filled with all these moments. When I was down in the DR and I was hanging out with all these wonderful people and my family down there and stuff. And my father, he's still with us and everything. And we hang out together a lot and stuff. And I don't know, it's just, there's all these things and just things that we're doing that bring us joy, that are so amazing. And so I think people should be more, I know I shouldn't tell other people what to do, but for myself, I need to be more, just recognize how amazing my life is and how amazing life is, generally speaking, right?
I would just personally like to tell people what to do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what alleviates your suffering. Is ordering other people around. Okay. That's a good one. All right. So I'm really glad that, Liz, you're back on Mega Blast. You've been on a few times, and you're one of the most popular guests. I mean, your podcasts are downloaded in the hundreds at this point, which, that doesn't sound like much, but for my podcast, that's pretty good, right? So
hundreds. I mean, whether it's my bank account or podcast downloads, hundreds is good. Yeah. There's other numbers that are also good, but hundreds are fine.
Yeah, hundreds of what per year? Hundreds of Okay, think about it that way, right?
Hundreds of dollars. Hundreds.
Yeah. Hundreds of dollars. Yeah, hundreds of times of doing what? Yeah. Okay. So I just wanted to thank you again, because and people seem to really enjoy a couple of them we put up. I saw comments going around. People sounded like they were really enjoying it. So I don't know what that means.
Maybe Jason, you sound very surprised.
Yeah. I know that looks really bad, right? Like, yeah,
Like,
like,
people really like you. I don't get it. It's weird. It's freaking me out.
you ever see Jiminy Glick? You ever know what Jiminy Glick?
Yeah, he
He did
was
that, he did that
funny.
interview. He did the interview with Mel Brooks where he did that. You're one of the greatest comedy legends of all time. How did that happen? Yeah, just like Mel Brooks is like looking at him like, what? That's kind of what you were like a minute ago. Like you sound because I'm not trying to be like Jiminy Glick, right? But maybe I'm, channeling his energy
Zach Galifianakis does that on
between the
Between
ferns.
Two Ferns.
Yeah.
Says the mean things to his interview subjects, and they just play it straight,
And
like
yeah, they're like
stare at him.
looking, yeah. Okay, so this brings us, we anyone listening to this can go back and listen to our conversation about Will Smith and Chris Rock. We talked a lot about, and we also talked about Elon Musk and people who hate him, and how wonderful all that hatred is, and how great all that is. But now we're back to the Grammys again, because you wrote a really amazing column about the latest Grammy Awards. So the objective of this podcast is to discuss, what the hell's going on with the Grammys in the 2020s, basically, right? Focusing on the most recent one. My first thing that I would like to ask you about is who's watching these things? I mean, I didn't even know they were on last year. I woke up, I saw Will Smith on social media slapping Chris Rock, and I was like, oh, the Grammys are on. And this year, pretty much, I looked, you sent me this, this column, this amazing column that, by the way, could you just say the name of that column about the Oscars? Maybe people could Google it and find it.
Yes. So it's the Fashion Brenda, my Substack, you mean?
Fashion Brenda, yeah.
Yes. And the Oscars one was called oh man. I'll look it up.
Okay, we'll put it
But in
in
the
the notes.
meantime, thank you for the plug and thank you for the
Yeah,
nice thoughts about it. But it was
it's
funny when you kind of just said a mouthful, because the first thing was the objective of this podcast discuss the Grammys. And I'm like, and then you go, who's watching it? I'm like, yeah, this might be a short podcast. Their cultural significance is so diminished. Like nobody cares. Literally nobody cares. In fact, I worried about that the whole time, because you sweat a fair bit over these blogs because you want to make them good, and you know that there's a lot of competition for people's attention. So you want to try and make them stand out, make people laugh and entertain them a bit. And you always think about things like don't offend people. The whole time I had this voice in my head saying, you're writing about something that nobody cares about anymore. But
mm,
it wasn't ultimately about the Grammys. It was
it's
about,
deeper. Yeah, it's
well, it was
deeper.
about the
Yeah.
concept of transgressive art, and how hard it is to be transgressive nowadays, because so many of our bourgeois cultural norms have long since been shattered. So you really have to push that envelope, and then you have to be careful and not to live out Gertrude Stein's uh, famous what did she say again? She said they don't know. It's like something about going too far. They don't know they don't know how to not go too far when they're going too far.
Mm. Wow,
So
that's a very deep concept. So just to be clear, Gertrude Stein, the famous feminist, right?
yeah, yeah.
Who wrote The
It's just one of her
Obstacle?
maxims that she used a lot, and people use it all the time nowadays. They always quote it. And it's like, um, okay, so in that particular Substack, it noted how um, Sam Smith, in a video that came out prior to the Grammys, it's very body, it's very camp. He's dressed like Divine. Does that cultural reference ring any bells?
It's sort of like a drag queen, kind of like a fat guy dressed up as a drag queen,
Yeah,
kind of like it's
greased
very
up.
strange.
Yeah, and he gets a golden shower in this at a nightclub, and then hits the Grammy stage with his collaborator Kim Petras, and they do this song and dance number, Unholy, and it's got a satanic theme to it. And that, I think, the expectation, they were trying to gin up controversy. It's going to be controversial. We're warning you, brace yourself, get your smelling salts, stand near the divan. You're gonna faint that away with this. And then the reaction was like from some savvier cultural observers who said, ha ha, look at these guys trying to be so edgy. Satan, give me a break. And I just thought, considering the guy just did a golden shower in a video, then all he brings to the Grammy stage is Satan. Like, what about a golden shower on the Grammy stage? That would be really transgressive. That would be really.
They didn't do that.
No, of course not. Satan is playing it safe. Satan, as a blasphemy against Christianity, is an utterly safe bet. You can say anything you want about Christianity.
That's interesting.
And you'll have some scattered objections. There'll be a few of the usual suspects who will speak up and say, this is really disgusting. But mostly everybody just shrug, meh, next, whatever, yawn.
So just to be clear, this golden shower thing that he did, like, where did he do that? Is that like a video he put up on social media or something?
I should have clarified. He simulated a golden shower.
Yeah, no,
he didn't actually have somebody pee on him for a video. You start to get.
It was not live porn, right? It was.
No. Yeah. You do get an inkling of what he sort of gets up to on the weekends, though.
Right, but that was something. I'm just wondering. He put that up on social media, on Instagram or something. And
that video,
usual
channels, usual channels of where music videos back in the day, it'd be on Much Music or MTV, or but we don't have those anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
So he put that up as a way of kind of, getting his reputation as like a real transgressive guy. He's out there doing strange things. The photos I saw, I don't know anything about him, but reading your blog post was so interesting. And then the pictures of it, I thought, boy, this just looks disgusting. Like, it looks like I wonder how, I don't know how graphic we can get in this podcast, but I wonder how many women watch a lot of porn and they see stuff like that. That's not necessarily golden showers, but things that people could imagine, of what men are doing to women, in a lot of porn. And they're sort of thinking that looks disgusting, right? That are, I wonder, and I sort of wonder, my reaction maybe is like a woman's reaction at a lot of male porn, like a lot of pornography that some women watch and just think that looks like disgusting. Like, that looks like actually makes me feel a little bit sick, right? That must be, a lot of women must see things like that in porn and go, right?
Well,
right?
I genuinely hope so.
Yeah, and then that was my reaction to that. That was just a still image on your blog post, and I just was like, this looks disgusting. Like, what? This doesn't look transgressive. It looks disgusting. But maybe I'm just being a prude. I don't know. I'm not some sexually, I'm not doing golden showers or anything. Right?
Well, it's degradation. Golden showers are degradation, right?
As is
it's
the
degrading.
Other, right? Okay, so that's partly what I think what I must be getting at with that type of male porn, the kind of things you see in a lot of female porn, is about degrading women, right? It's very degrading.
I would imagine.
Right.
I would imagine.
And so it's a similar dynamic there, right? Okay. That was my sort of visceral reaction to that. I thought that doesn't look transgressive. That looks stupid and disgusting. And then there's this thing about Satan, like we're going to do Satan. So what that made me think of was, like, we're going to go on stage at the Grammys, and you said that Madonna and all the others were like, giving like sort of like trigger warning type things, right? They were saying like, it's going to be we're really pushing the envelope this year and all this stuff that you were saying, right? They were kind of priming us.
It was really funny about Madonna because she's a real mixed bag. She's obviously really a ingenious businesswoman. Now she's in her 60s. She's definitely not aging gracefully. I think a lot of these super, super rich, super famous people, they lose touch a little bit and something becomes almost disfigured about them.
Mm.
And as I think it was John Updike who said, fame is the mask that rots the face. And so, so there she is. And of course, she's been transgressive throughout her career. She's pushed the envelope.
She
She
really
got
has. I mean,
she
she
got
really
arrested in
has, you know?
Toronto.
Yeah,
Yeah, her
yeah, getting
sex
arrested.
book.
Yeah.
And there was that whole Camille Paglia thing, if you remember. Camille Paglia said she's sex positive and she's Dionysian and she's like a Greek goddess and she's like reclaiming sexuality, that Madonna held a true mantle of
For women.
feminism.
For women to
Now,
control their own sexuality, right? And like be
sure,
sexual and appealing to men, but doing that in their own control, like having their own power over that, right? Is that,
yes,
sorry to interrupt, I just
yeah,
wanted to clarify what you
no,
mean.
no,
It's
no.
really important, you know?
And so now she's in her early 60s and um, she's still stuck on this idea, but of course, she's stuck on a number of other ideas as well. And then, she's if anything, she's also very corporate. She
Yeah.
has really done well by corporations, big music companies, big media companies. So so obviously it's like, okay, let's get Madonna to introduce Sam Smith and we'll say, here's the deal, Madonna. Sam Smith's going to do some wild stuff out here with Kim Petras, and there's going to be cages, and there's going to be, I guess there were supposed to be strippers, and there was a bit of BDSM flavor in there. And Madonna said, okay, I got it. And then Madonna could find a way to make Madonna the center of it and let everybody know that she's the original envelope pusher. She's the
Sort of the
original edgy.
OG, the kind of the
She's the
OG
OG
of
edgy. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
right, yeah.
And so then she makes this introduction. And it's so obvious that everybody got the memo. There was a memo, it was a communications memo. So there's so many things happening there that just make it that keep eroding commercial music, pop music's authenticity. And one of them is this thing that they call journalism. And that is like one of the great hallmarks of media journalists is that they are very lazy. And I can say that firsthand. I'm lazy. And I worked at a newspaper, I was surrounded by super lazy people, and they just like, it's like, can you just write me a little 200 words on this jazz band? And I asked the guy who, his whole job at the Vancouver Sun was, I just write about jazz. And he's like, I'm kind of busy. Like, put his fishing hat on.
He's using
Anyway,
Chat GPT right now to write his articles. I can
oh,
guarantee you that.
so many of these
Yeah.
retired journalists are furious that
Yeah.
they missed out on that.
Yeah.
So basically, the journalism thing, that was that I obviously am not smart enough to coin that term. It was a guy
Can
in
you just
the U.
describe what you mean by the journalism thing? Could just, yeah.
Okay. So you are a journalist with a J, and as a journalist, you receive these press releases. You get them like all day, every day, and it could come from Clairol is sending you a study that's been conducted on hair. Would you care to hear about it? And this master's
Oh, I
thesis
see.
calls you
Yeah.
up and says, we've just done a study about hair. And after a while you go, oh, like this is just someone's shilling. Like,
Yeah.
so,
PR.
um,
They're using journalists, right, in order to get their stuff out into their without having to pay for advertising, right?
yes.
Something like
And so
that,
what
right?
happens is, yes, exactly.
Right.
And what happens is you get some lazy journalists who see a press release. So they take it and they churn it into a news story. And that's what this guy called journalism.
Oh,
So
that's interesting. Yeah.
he did his own experiment on journalism. And it was actually hysterically funny. Like I ended up doing this story when I was working on Q at CBC Radio. And he set himself up as a PR company, and he sent out these press releases to like the Guardian Daily Mail, all these places.
The
And one
usual
of them was,
suspects that would gobble stuff up really easily. Yeah,
yeah,
right.
and without
Okay.
questioning it, without stopping to say, is this true? Without cross-referencing sources. So he sent this one out saying penazzling. You know what? Okay, you know what vajazzling is, right?
No.
Vajazzling is when you a woman has all these gems put on her lady parts to make it really pretty.
Oh, okay. All right.
So that was a big trend. I don't know, maybe 10 years ago.
Okay.
And then this guy said that the latest trend was penazzling. They do it to a guy's penis.
So
And
this
he
is the
sent it
thing. So
out.
so so cock rings and stuff like that. Like
No, it's just like above your meat and two veg in that kind of pubis bone area. And they shave it and then they bejewel it. Of course, nobody does this. It was a joke.
so this is the equivalent of James Lindsay scamming all the
Yes,
like
yes.
basically with the fake papers, right? You're gaming the system, getting something published when it's bullshit, kind of, right?
And then he turns it all around on them. So what he did was he sent out this press release. He gets a call from some woman, a quote unquote journalist, who calls and says, "Yeah, I heard about this thing you got going." And then he said that he had it done to himself and that his girlfriend loves it. And it made it uh, like it went to as far as India. Like it
So
went
this
around
this
the
got
world.
into the Guardian, got into the Daily Mail, got into like big
It did.
newspapers. Any
It
Canadian
did.
newspapers?
I'm I'm not really sure, but the
Yeah.
reach was really. But there was another
Guardian's
one that he.
big. Guardian's a big paper. I mean, it's in the UK, right? I
I
mean, it's
know.
yeah, not a good. I didn't say a good paper. I said a big paper. So,
The
uh,
funniest, yeah, exactly.
yeah.
The funniest one was when he said that there was an invention to stop people from cheating on each other. I think it delivered an electric shock or it caused the person to pass out.
What's this? A
And
chastity belt? Something that
it
says
was a
that sounds like
modern day electronic chastity belt. And it made the evening news at a local TV station in like Baltimore or something. It was really funny. He really got them. I mean, it
so.
was a
Just for the record, what is this man's name?
I'm going to have to dig it up. Somehow
Yeah,
we went down a rabbit hole here. I wasn't.
yeah. Well, what's this bejazzling? What did you say?
There was vajazzling, and then he
Bejazzling.
made up penazzling.
Penazzling. Okay, so penazzling is to decorate the pubic penile area with jewels,
Yes,
and this is completely made up. It's not a thing.
it's not
Nobody
a
does
thing.
this. And this guy gamed. He sent it off as press releases. He was able to get these journalists who didn't have any, they weren't smart or they weren't conscientious enough to actually go and check it out and find out it was bullshit. They just ran the story because they thought it looked cool, right? Something like that.
Yeah, it's funny because I mean, this is a big problem with modern day journalists. Is not digging a little deeper. I
Right.
remember I nearly got hoaxed myself. Again, I was at Q, and there were these little mini art stories that the Monday morning producer was supposed to take a story, turn it into a quick script, maybe include a little soundbite. And this one came to me about that apparently happened in Australia, but I was just missing one line from the story. Had something to do with stolen bicycles. Anyway, I needed one more line for the story, so I started to dig around to try and find where the story was mentioned somewhere else because it's always if a story's only in one place on the
Yeah,
entire
that's always a
internet,
red flag,
yeah,
right?
it's
You think
not
it's
true.
right?
I
Yeah.
and then I realized it was a hoax.
Well,
I did find
corroboration by definition is finding the same piece of information from a totally separate source, right? Like if you
yes,
corroborate, if somebody tells you something, they say, hey, I saw this accident or whatever, and he's the only person who tells you that and swears it happened, then one way to find out if it's true is to call someone else who doesn't know that
yeah.
person, never, and see if that person can say, find out if it's true, right? Okay,
Talking journalism 101 here. We got onto this because we were talking about a press release that emanated from the Grammys comms team saying,
Right,
we've
right.
really got to gin this up. We got to light some people's hairs on fire. We got to disturb the olds and get them talking. And
So let's put a bunch of old people up on a stage like Madonna, who you know what I mean? Like it's kind of like what were the oldsters? Like who are the oldsters now? Madonna's what, 65?
I think
Like
the idea being that if they start getting threats from the FCC,
right,
or
right,
if they start, and those were the headlines that followed, um, conservatives and what's the word? Conservatives outraged over
J. Edgar
Grammy's
Hoover,
performance.
J. Edgar Hoover appalled by, the sexual nature of the Grammys kind of thing, right? To
Yeah,
cartoon example, obviously J. Edgar Hoover has been dead for about 70 years, but
good
just
reference.
right.
Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah,
Hey, see,
exactly. Yeah. George Washington was appalled when he saw that. Right,
it's kind of like based on the principle that all publicity is good publicity.
Right, right. So they
But
sent this out. They tried to gin it up, and then they sent out. It sounded like from when I read your article that they were trying to sort of give these little sort of like priming warnings, like this is going to be big, like this is going to be heavy duty. What we're going to do is going to really shock the pants off everybody, kind of thing. And then and then they come out. They do this Satan thing, like they're doing this Satan,
yeah,
wearing this ridiculous clothing and trying to be, And what struck me is that it makes me think. You mentioned this in your article about how it's that these are Gen Xers and baby boomers. It made me think of. Do you remember the Piss Christ thing? You remember the thing in the 80s and
yes,
90s? Like this
yes,
artist, and it was in the United States, in New York somewhere. Who I think he was like a Puerto Rican American kind of guy, and he had done all these paintings where he'd taken crucifixes and submerged it in urine and
yeah,
taken photographs. And there were all these photographs, and there were also photographs of like fisting and stuff. He'd done like all this really heavy, like really shocking stuff. And then it caused this whole outrage among the moral majority, fury among all the kind of more conservative Americans who are, Christian, Bible Belt. Well, this is disgusting. They're just disgracing the religion and all this kind of stuff. And it caused a huge fury in the 80s and 90s. It was a big, huge deal that went on for years, right? So it makes me think these people, they were like, it's almost like they wanted to basically manufacture something like that. That's kind of what I think the model in their mind was, if they could get, all those moral majority people to kind of react, all the people in Oklahoma or whatever. Meanwhile, most of the people in Oklahoma aren't even watching. They don't care. And if there's something transgressive, they're not going to care that much anyway. Like if there's some
that's why I
Satan,
wonder what if Sam Smith really wanted to provoke a reaction. What about, having the Islamic prophet get a lap dance on stage? See
yeah,
what kind of
wow.
reaction he would.
Wow. That's
So,
such a beautiful point. If you really want to stir the pot, you insult Islam. You don't insult Christianity, right?
or have a strong anti-Semitic message. See
Yeah.
what happens. All you have to do is look at Kanye or Ye. Subversive is attacking Islam or Judaism. Subversive isn't attacking Christ. They already submerged a crucifix in urine, and I mean it's old. It's like it's old hat. Used to it, and that. I mean, look what happened after Ye offended Jewish people with his comments, his despicable comments about Hitler.
Yeah.
Despicable. But
Just
what
to be
happened?
clear, that they are anti-Semitic. His comments are anti-Semitic.
But
Just
absolutely.
Yeah.
But what happened very quickly was Ye's career was pretty much obliterated. But if you insult Christ or blaspheme Christianity or you taunt, provoke, nothing happens to you.
Well,
nothing.
what you're making me think is also that blasphemy has been reanimated in many European countries in the last 20 years via Islam. Blasphemy laws in European countries have been there have been charges placed. In Denmark, there was a case where, and in the UK and a few other places where people, there's like someone posts a picture of the Prophet Muhammad on social media, and the police go using the old laws from the 19th and 17th, way back when it was illegal to desecrate Christ and Christianity, that no one's even imagined doing those things. No one cares if you put up a picture, like, the Charlie Hebdo. They had all this stuff desecrating Christian stuff. Nobody cared. It was when they desecrated the Muslim. So it makes me think that piss Christ thing, if you want to use modern parlance, was a form of hate speech. No, I'm not endorsing hate speech, but it was.
No, of course. I know,
think hate speech laws they're as dangerous as blasphemy laws in my personal view. But it was a form of hatred towards Christianity, in the same way that shoving a picture of the Prophet Muhammad in front of people who find that offensive is hateful to them. Right?
Yes.
It is hateful to Muslims who they're very offended by that. The same way that the Christians were offended by the piss Christ thing, and it's intentional. The Charlie Hebdo, they wanted to offend the Christians and the Muslims, right?
Yeah.
And yet, I never thought of the piss Christ thing as a form of hate speech. I always thought of it as freedom and art, and and I don't know that I don't think any of it should be considered hate speech, in my view.
That's freedom of speech. I'm a free speech absolutist. So.
Me too. So that was something that really.
One thing that did kind of make me laugh, that actually really made me laugh, was the story that appeared on TMZ. Was that some high up, like practically a cardinal or a bishop in the Church of Satan, he's like, it wasn't that offensive. Like he didn't even really impress Satanists.
Yeah. So I'm trying to understand what that means. There's a Church of Satan. It's in San Francisco, I think. It's Anton. What's the guy's name? And there was that Anton. There was the head of the Church of Satan. It was a thing, like in the 60s. There were people that followed it and everything. It was a.
Oh, sure. Well, there still are, apparently. I think, in the course of my research, like, I don't really care about Satanism. It's like,
I know, it's so mundane and boring.
So stupid.
Yeah.
But what I did read is that and I could be wrong on this, but this is what I read. That Satanism is a rejection of all organized religion, and it is a worship of the self. Which, no wonder we're seeing so many examples of Satanism everywhere we look.
Profound. So a narcissistic culture where people don't have any regard for other people, their parents, their children, their wives, husbands, whatever, those people are not important. Only person that's important is you. In some senses, is a kind of like a satanic culture, right? Is that paraphrasing?
Going back to Nietzsche, we lost religion, but maybe the human mind has a propensity to find something bigger than itself to believe in, and so it starts latching onto various things. That's why a lot of people have pointed out that wokeness and progressivism, communism, is a form of religion, and the climate crisis is another form of religion that mimics a lot of the rules and behaviors of a typical organized religion.
Well, they give people's lives, like the wokeness thing and the climate change thing, they give people's lives meaning, right? Like you're not just some guy going to work, watching Netflix, it's kind of like you can be a hero who's going to save the planet. You can be a hero who's saving the downtrodden, indigenous people, black people, whatever, right? You can be part of that struggle and heroism, and you can give yourself up to this cause. And as you pointed out, it's actually very human for people to want to do that. That's what religion traditionally has filled that, what Douglas Murray called it, somebody else came up with it, but a God-shaped hole. You ever heard that? There's a God-shaped hole. I know, it's a great line, right? So there's this God-shaped hole and people are filling it. In the previous century, going back to Nietzsche, that people have commented on, the previous century, the God-shaped hole was filled by some pretty ugly stuff, fascism and communism.
Yeah.
ways that people, especially communism, went on for and still continues in some senses into our time as a way of filling that sense of we are getting, there's a religious nature to communism, the communist idea. It's like we're all going to get together as people across the world, and we're going to have all the workers are going to be united, and we're going to have this wonderful paradise if we can just get through to it. We need to do socialism in the meantime, where the party has to suppress everything. But once we get to communism, it's going to be great. And everyone's going to be just living in this perfect paradise or whatever that's on Earth, right? And of course, it doesn't work out that way, obviously. But
no.
yeah, okay.
It's completely antithetical to human behavior, completely. And there's the dead bodies piled up to prove it, like 100 million of them.
Millions of them. Yeah, and people are shocking. People are aware of how fascism basically takes the same thinking. It says you can be part of this great struggle, but instead of saying for the great workers of the world, you're going to be part of a great struggle for your nation and your people, right? Who are going to struggle against the other peoples of the world and dominate them if necessary, or because the world is a battleground. Both ideas have this idea that the world is a battleground, where you have to crush the ideas on the other side rather than let them crush your ideas. You mentioned earlier the free speech. I mean, your view and my view is no, people should just be able to say what they want to say freely. And there's no one idea there's no one set of ideas that's the perfect set of ideas, right? That are going to dominate over the others. You want multiple different ideologies and ways of looking at the world for people to, this is my personal view, for people to flourish, because they can bounce off each other, and people can come up with sort of a dialectic type thing. But
that's so interesting, because I mean, I understand the impulse to repress speech, because you hear somebody saying something that's utterly execrable and disgusting, and you think those words have to be dangerous. But if you pause for a second just to be rational about it, they're words. You can't control them. One way or another, if somebody's got something to say, they'll find a way to say it, and they'll find an audience. And also, I've had this pointed out to me a couple of times. Hitler was really a product of censorship.
Yes,
he was brutally censored.
He was put in prison. They put him in prison. They locked him up. That's when he wrote Mein Kampf, right?
Okay, good. Also, I'm not telling. I don't want to tell tales in school.
Hugo Chavez was briefly put in prison as well.
Right.
Anyway,
for speaking, and then also and this goes for censorship as well. Who is this wise body? Who
are these sages? Who are the ones who are going to decide exactly
on our behalf that we apparently lack the intelligence to discern? And also,
that's the other thing. Am I too dumb? Like, if I hear someone who says something hateful, am I so stupid that I can't make up my own mind? Like, why does the government? I don't understand the concept. I don't,
I know, it's absurd. So as much as it doesn't, I don't like it. It's unpleasant, and also, well, we've seen what's been happening with repression of speech and censorship. We just had that we've had a pandemic of free speech repression in the last 3 years, when government colluded with high tech to shut people up and silence people. And
how well is that going, right? I mean, well, it's radicalizing a lot of people. And I'm not that I'm being radicalized, but my trust in the institutions has diminished over the past several years, partly as a result of all this,
It's in the negative, I know, and you don't trust these institutions, and now they're crying, saying nobody trusts us, nobody likes us. Like, what did you expect? What did you expect?
Yeah, so that's a really deep and profound point that actually does stem from this. So the institutions, I mean, you could count the Oscars as a kind of old guard institution. It's a 20th century institution. I mean, it's not a government, but it is a system connected to Hollywood that gives out, it's this big circle jerk, for lack of I want to really, a kind of a term that's a very polite term, so I'll call it a circle jerk. right? That's a sweet way of describing what they're doing. But it is this big deal, and people get all dressed up, and it's this thing that's been going for what, 100 years? Was the 86th, you said?
Mm-hmm.
86, a long time, going back to the golden, silent era films, and all this stuff. And yet it's tired. It's a very tired institution, right? And it's
Yeah, it
very
really is.
fatigued. It's got this fatigue. And your article makes me think, boy, these people are kind of like a bunch of people who fought in a war, and they, like veterans of a war who vanquished an enemy, and they had this great glory, and they came home and everybody was celebrating them, and they were getting all this acclaim. And then they got older, and then sort of the celebration gradually diminished over time. But then they're all 75, 80 years old, and they're still kind of sitting there going, remember when we stormed over the, and they're trying to sort of portray that as though it was the war was last year or something. It's like,
That's
no.
a great analogy.
Yeah, something like that. That's what your article made me think. It's like, these people, this is not the piss Christ, this is not, you're not going against Tipper Gore. You're not Tipper Gore. I mean, right? Like, yeah, I mean, Tipper Gore, she's what? She's Al Gore's wife. I mean, they're now the institute. They're like the people, they're all the lefties now, right? I mean, I can't even figure out which way who are we supposed to be offending exactly? Like, I don't even understand.
Know.
It's all.
Yeah, that was the other point. I mean, it's right on the last second of that Sam Smith performance, out popped a sign with the red, flamey, fiery background, sponsored by Pfizer. And I thought, oh, wow, that was so on the nose. It was too on the nose. Really. It was like, there's Satan right there.
Right. The big pharma. Right.
Yeah. Oh, so you guys were celebrating Satan.
Wow.
And Pfizer loved it. I mean, come
wild.
on.
So corporate stuff. So basically, big institutions, the Grammys, the big corporations, the pharmaceutical companies, governments, they're trying to act like punk rock teenagers, is basically what you're saying, right? Is it something like that? They're trying to be that kid who's got the mohawk or whatever, and he's like, anarchy for the UK, getting banned, like the way the Sex Pistols were kind of, disrupting the monarchy and doing all this stuff. It's almost like if the Queen were trying to be that the king now, I suppose, we're trying to be that transgressive or something. It's almost like that seems to be, from what I'm reading in your article, that's how it feels to me, but maybe I'm misreading it. I don't know.
It must be sad to wake up and think you've been fighting the man all this time, and then it's like, nah, you're the man, dude. It's a little sad. That's why I never tried, really. It'd be like, I would just suck at it. I'd be that person. It's like, psst, dude, you're the establishment. It's like, oh no, my whole life has been a waste.
Yeah. So there's a very sad part of your article. Like, I mean this as a great compliment to your brilliant writing. There's this sadness to the whole thing. There's this kind of pathetic watching these people who really, they want all that acclaim. Madonna, right? She's the OG of all this stuff, right? She's the one, and she's kind of up there. She doesn't look as nearly, she's not aging as well as I think many people were making that comment. What are we talking a bit about that? Is that sexism? Because I saw pictures of her. I thought she looks okay for a woman who's 65. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to. She looks like she's had some facelift work done on her face. Yeah.
I don't
know.
No. She.
Go ahead.
I know. There was some pushback on that, because I mean, there was a gasp heard around the world. It's like,
from her
what
face, is
going on? And it's like, dissing someone else's appearance,
especially a woman. There's something. That doesn't sit well with me somehow. A woman who's,
because really women
are going to look better when they're younger, more than men. I mean, that's. I don't mean that as a sexist comment. I mean that the way that men are attracted to women, younger women are going to get more attention from men than women who are older. That's a sad reality of life in a certain sense.
Well, what is the basis of, it's shallow to judge other people on their appearances.
True.
It's
Yeah.
and
True.
it's stupid because I mean, what if you didn't know who Mother Teresa was? That she was a woman who, with her own hands, healed helped lepers in gutters.
Right.
If you just glance at it, you think, oh well, there's an old granny there. She's quite a bit wrinkled, isn't she? I mean, so it's like you don't know anybody by their appearance,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you judge people on first impressions because maybe they said something awkward, tripped over themselves, whatever, they were nervous. We're not supposed to be so shallow and judge people like that. We are supposed to accept people. But how are we supposed to accept somebody who clearly hasn't accepted herself?
Yeah.
This
It's
is a
interesting.
woman
Yeah.
who is in her early 60s who's trying desperately to appear like a 25-year-old. It's fine. I mean, nobody's saying that.
She can probably still give a pretty mean performance on a stage too. She's probably in very good physical condition. Like, just to be very fair to Madonna, I mean, she obviously doesn't look as good as she did when she was 25. I'm not trying to say
Who
that.
does? Nobody does.
Nobody does. But on the other hand, she is quite like, I have a great deal of respect for Madonna and what she's done.
She's
I,
amazing.
I I love her music. I think she's
Of course,
amazing, I think she's really incredible. And her, and what you
absolutely.
mentioned before, all the things she did for that kind of empowering of sexuality, of women saying, hey, I'm going to be beautiful and I'm going to be attractive to men, and I'm going to use that as that's going to be my power. That's going to be me empowering myself. I think that is such an amazing, great way to I think it's very empowering for women. I think
What bugs me about
you know?
her is that the second she gets a bit of pushback, like, Madonna, what did you do with your face? You look like a retired porn star. And she snaps back with, the patriarchy has got its
Oh
knee on
God.
my throat again. And it's like, oh,
What?
honey, and she's saying, I've been treated like a doormat, like the
What are
last
you
person in
talking
the
about?
world.
You've been acclaimed all over the world by
Aye,
literally
but
billions of
and
people,
yet,
right?
and so suddenly she's a victim, and I've called her before the Norma Desmond of pop music. You remember Norma Desmond, that line where he said, "You're Norma Desmond. You used to be big," and she said, "I am big.
But the
It's the
pictures
pictures
got
that
small.
got small.
Right.
It's
Right.
not me. It's never me."
Yeah.
Because that is the basis of runaway narcissism, where it's like, Madonna, what did you do with your face? You're the patriarchy.
Yeah.
You're
I didn't do
ageist.
anything. You, all you. It's all you. All you
Yeah, it's like,
millions of people who are criticizing me, right?
yeah, and
Something
it's
like
like, yeah,
that.
you've got on Instagram, you got your naked ass in the air with your fishnet stockings on, and you got children. I don't know. I'm sounding like a
Didn't you write
judgy
a
bitch.
column?
Like,
Didn't you write a
what have
column?
I done?
You wrote a column about Madonna that was so good that it was all about how, like, exactly what you just said, something about how, like, if all these people are criticizing you, then, it can't all be them. I'm trying to remember. This was another column you wrote, I'm pretty sure.
That one was about the fact that she had somehow struck a deal for a biopic of her life. And
Right.
she had arranged it that she was going to get a writer credit, she was going to be one of the producers, and she was going to direct it. And I was like, okay, that is some of the most extraordinary hubris. And what did I just read the other day? I was going to update this. The deal has been kiboshed. It's been killed. They're not going forward with it. Somebody finally put a stop to that insanity. And so, for like, how many reasons is that a bad idea? One, biopics already are not
They
good.
stink anyway, most of them.
They stink because a human existence doesn't fit well into
Two
a
hours.
three-act
Yeah.
story structure, like
Yeah.
in the Joseph Campbell sense of the narrative.
Well, they also
She's had
always
ups and
follow.
downs and twists and turns and
They also always follow this same psychological trauma during childhood, and then they
yeah.
have this formulaic thing that they do, and then the kind of the coming of age and liberating yourself and all this stuff. Like it's always the same story. Like you watch the Ray Charles one, you watch it's gonna be okay. Now they're
Yeah.
gonna have the childhood scene where he's traumatized. Now they're gonna have the when making it big, and now they're gonna do this. Now they're gonna do that. But anyway,
And also, if you are famous enough that somebody is making the biopic of your life, probably the basic story beats are already well known,
you're
well
right.
reported. Like we already know what happened along the way. So
I've
there's not
read
going to be many
biographies about
surprises.
Madonna, so I feel like if I was watching it, I'd be like, "Oh yeah, right. That's when this happens. I'm seeing it now, but I already know the story, right?"
Yeah, know the
So,
story.
yeah. So that's really one thing I wanted to return to is this. There's this weird narcissism of people like Madonna, I suppose, where this was noted when Renee Zellweger she had some facelift done where all of a sudden you could hardly even recognize her. Do you remember this was about 5 years ago?
I
It was like
remember.
that she came out and her face was she looked good actually, like it looked like actually good facial work, but it didn't look like her anymore. All the sort of chubbiness of her cheeks was gone, and she had these sort of dimples that had never been there before, and all this kind of stuff. And so it was like people were commenting in newspapers and social media and stuff like this, all about, wow, and they were sort of criticizing it and everything. And then she's reacting with this same impetuous, like, oh, this is so unfair. All these people are talking about my appearance and all this kind of stuff. And some smart commentators made this comment like, if you spend your whole life begging everyone to look at you, and then you complain when people are looking at you, there's something really wrong with that, right? Like it's like you want everyone to look at you, you want people to admire you and also comment on your appearance, and then you're upset when they're not saying what you want them to say. I mean, how much, in other words,
Wait,
what's
are we
the
talking
point?
about Meghan Markle or Renee
Renee
Zellweger?
Zellweger, but I don't know, maybe
Because you just
Meghan Markle.
described Meghan and Harry. They're like,
Oh
we
yeah,
want
the
our
tour around
privacy.
the
We want our
world, right?
privacy.
Yeah. Did you see the South Park thing? Did you see that?
Yes,
Yeah, so maybe you could
exactly.
describe it. Yeah. Why don't you describe it?
Oh, well, she's talking about suing them. It distilled exactly that, which was an absolute fascination with her own notoriety, um, always inserting herself into everything with these vanity projects like this Netflix series, his memoir, all over the every interview stop there is, every chance at attention you can conceive of. Like there's a mass shooting in Uvalde, Texas, and she hops on a plane and inserts herself into it. And, like it's a private jet over there for a day and puts on her jeans because it's not a dressed up look. She puts on her $600 rag and bone jeans, but always inserting themselves everywhere. And then it's like, respect our privacy or we're going to sue the pants off you.
That's such an interesting, strange phenomenon that's so hard to understand. And it makes me think, like, is there any such phenomenon that occurs in interpersonal relationships with people? I mean, do I ever do this to people? Do you ever do this kind of behavior where you effectively ask for two opposing things at the same time, and it's unfair to the people you're asking it to? Is that maybe too deep of a
I've never done
psychological?
anything like that, I
Yeah,
swear.
right. Yeah.
I don't know what you're referring to.
But
Yeah,
I'm just wondering, is this just the same thing that lots of people do, except it's so scaled up on such a massive scale across
it's
the world?
magnified.
Yeah, like I don't know. I mean, or is it something unique about Meghan Markle and Prince Harry? Yeah, I don't know. I'm not. I do know that Prince Harry is one of these people who seems to want to act like he came up in East London or something like this. Like he kind of wants to be this kind of man of the people or something. He's very, I don't know. It's like he doesn't, I mean, he even left the monarchy, right? It's
He
technically.
left the monarchy, but he still has a royal title. He's still a prince. His name still appears on the royal register. He's still, I can never remember exactly, but I think he's fourth in line to the throne. He's number 4 still.
Right.
So
So someone goes
if there
and gets
was
a machine gun out and offs 3 of them, then he's our monarch. He's literally our monarch, right?
exactly. So
Yeah.
and his 2 children, if I have that right,
Well, Prince
yeah,
Charles, excuse me, King Charles now is the king.
yeah,
He
and
is
then it
King
would be,
Charles's son, right?
so then it would be William as the
William
eldest.
is right.
And then if you cycle through William's 3 children, because they would follow after William.
Oh, really?
And then after,
It wouldn't
yes.
go. Okay. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
And then after those 3 children would come Prince
Harry.
Harry, and
Right.
then his firstborn, secondborn, and then where would it go after that? I'd have
That's
to
interesting.
check.
I didn't know. I thought it cycled down from brother to sister to brother, but it actually doesn't. It goes down.
It goes down the line, and then
the line one way. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to think about that kind of narcissistic behavior on a smaller scale, right? Because people talk about narcissism as a general problem. You know, I guess I'm trying to. I don't want to be that person. Like, I don't want to be like Prince Harry, right? You know what I mean? So,
I don't want to come down too hard on him, because I feel for him a little bit. Like, being born into the royal family isn't easy.
Gotta be tough.
And
people think it's easy to be rich and famous if you're born into it, but I don't know. I mean,
no, and they're super dysfunctional and a little bit chilly. They're kind of cold, and people step into that milieu and they think they could change it. That was Princess Diana. She
right.
thought she could make them all warm and fuzzy. You know, she'd walk up and hug the queen, and the queen would stand there stiff as a rod going, "Babe, what are you doing? Why don't do that stuff?" And Meghan saw the surface of it, and then she stepped inside of it and went, "Dang, this shit's boring." Like, they lead extraordinarily boring lives.
Yeah.
And really, really hard work.
You're constantly going around doing photo ops and shaking hands and
ribbon cuttings at
things,
right? Ribbon cuttings at a factory, like, just absolutely mind-numbing, stultifying hard work. That's the funny thing about the queen. She never wanted a career. She never wanted to be queen, and she was thrust into a career. And then it turned out that actually she was a workaholic.
Yeah,
you know, she had a
good
really,
at, from what I understand, Queen Elizabeth. She did a very good job, right?
Rock solid work ethic.
Yeah,
and it's been rumored. I mean, I didn't actually hear her say it, or I don't know if anybody did, but when Meghan Markle's limited exposure to the royal duties, she found it so tedious that at one point she exclaimed, "I can't believe I'm not getting paid for this."
That's hilarious. Yeah. It's
not that fun, and you don't have a lot of freedom.
You have very little freedom. The other problem with being born into that, if you're Prince Harry or if you're King Charles or someone, is that there's nowhere up to go. Like you and I were born in a circumstance where I can make something of my life. Like, at the end of my life, I can say, hey, you know, I couldn't read until I was in grade 3 or something, and now I'm a professor at CEGEP or whatever. I couldn't even talk to women when I was 20, 21. I was so petrified, and now I have this beautiful wife. Or, like, I can, like, these things I've achieved on my own that I can tell people, right? Whereas if you're born into that, you can fulfill the duties up to what's acceptable or even good, as Queen Elizabeth did, but you can't really move up. You can't, through your own initiative, you can't move up in the world, because
you can do good and you can accomplish things and you can get awards,
but you can't at the end of it say, hey, I started out down here and now I'm up here, right?
Like
Which
Drake,
many of us
from the bottom, now I'm he.
Right.
Started
Yeah.
from the bottom, not a whole
Right.
team.
Drake. Right. Exactly. Started from the bottom. Now we hear like, right. If you're Drake, you can say that. I mean, not that he started down in some ghetto. The guy was like rich or whatever. Right. Like he grew up in some well-off neighborhood, but he wasn't born into total privilege. Right. He
No,
wasn't. Right.
Malcolm Gladwell talks about this. He talks about the ideal environment for success for children. And he said it's a threshold. Too little works against you, too much works against you.
It's
I'm not sure how
interesting.
much I'm not sure how much weight I put on anything that Malcolm Gladwell says. And I wonder if half the shit he says he just made up. Because it's like,
since
I
since
can't
his
reveal the
last monk
source.
debate, that was quite a spectacle when he
Yeah.
played the race card what 4 times against Matt Taibbi and Douglas Murray. That was something. And then he used ad
They
hominem
mopped the floor
attacks.
with his fuzzy afro.
Yeah, I know. And he used ad hominem attacks instead of presenting evidence. I mean, it was really
It was
something. It
dreadful.
was dread. I
But
mean, very
there was
disappointing.
something to take away when he talks about uh, birthright, and he mentions that some hotshot producer worth hundreds of millions of dollars who had been born in Chicago, arrived in LA, not two nickels to rub together, clothes on his back, and made it all
Mm,
on his own by his own wit and uh, he just hard scrabbled his way to the top. And then he had kids, and these kids were obviously given private
everything.
schools, private jets.
Yeah.
And he said, I look back at my life, and if there's anything that kind of like really gets me in the gut, it's the idea that my children will never have
Yeah.
the opportunity to overcome what
Because they
I
got everything
overcame,
ready. Yeah. Yeah.
because having overcome extreme poverty is the one thing that gives him more satisfaction
Then
in his
all of the
life than,
acclaim and all
yeah,
this stuff. Yeah. Actually rising out of that means something to him. The fact that,
yeah,
right, that he
as
can
it as
say.
it would, as it would.
That reminds me of a story. My father-in-law, Juan Rodriguez, in the Dominican Republic, told me years ago when we were drinking together once down there. I said, what was your father like? He said, my father was a great man. He was a great man. But then over the years, I was wondering, he didn't tell me why. So this last trip, I said, hey, Juan, like you told me your father was a great man. Can you tell me why he was a great man? He said, yeah, I'll tell you why. He said he arrived here in La Romana, Dominican Republic, age of 11, with no money in his pocket. Started working at the age of 11 at the sugar plant, at the sugar factory. And then he got
Wow,
married, had a bunch of kids. And at the end, he had a house and everything. It's like, that is a great man. Somebody who came from Haiti, didn't know how to read, had
wow,
nothing. It's like, you think that's an achievement. There's a person who
yeah,
really did something. Like that's how I would like to be remembered. I'd like to be remembered that I was able to raise myself out of something and create something for the world. And then he did,
yeah,
because we all only have what we have. That Juan's father, Fanny's grandfather, was born in Haiti in like 1925 or something. You know what I mean, or whatever the hell it was. It was literally having nothing, and so that's something that I think that it's sort of sad in some senses that Harry, for everything he has, he wouldn't be able to say something like that. He wouldn't have any of that. And kind of like the kids of this big movie producer guy too. That's kind of his point, I think.
yeah.
Right.
Well,
But
poor
one thing,
Harry. I mean, he was actually a very cool royal, and then he met
wore a
Meghan.
swastika. Didn't he wear a swastika once? Do you remember that?
He did. He did. That's so British. It's like, oh, it's a funny party. We're going to have a funny party. We're going to dress like Uncle, what's his name? There's a lot of Nazism.
Oswald, what was his name? That British fascist,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oswald.
Wait,
Oswald. There was a
okay.
British fascist.
It was the guy who married a Mitford. He was the guy. So that was the story. Was William Buckley Jr. was in the home of this, well-heeled British gentry, lord of the manor, and they had a lovely meal. And he glanced over at the fireplace as they were sipping their brandy and said, "Why do you have a portrait of, I can't remember which Nazi it was, but wasn't Hitler, but it was one of
Martin
his, it was
Boring,
Goebbels. Goebbels.
Goebbels. Wow.
And he said, "Why do you have a
Portrait of
portrait of Goebbels
Goebbels.
over your fireplace?" He said, "He was my godfather." It
Oh
was
my
like,
God.
and
Whoa. There's a conversation stopper. Like,
yeah, it was like, oh, it's getting late. I got to dash. I should be
wow.
getting on.
Jesus. God.
So, uh, William was a cool guy. He went to war. He was a soldier. He seemed quite charming and quite nice and a sensitive, emotional kid who lost his mom. It's very sad.
Hmm.
But then maybe he and Megan were a little bit nitro and glycerin
Yeah.
because she is, you know, it's funny about the bit of power balance that happens between men and women because it's never perfectly equal. Somebody's always in charge, right?
Yeah.
Maybe some people don't want the power. They want to be uh
Hmm.
they they want somebody else to wear the pants.
Yeah.
They want to abdicate that responsibility.
Mm.
And then a lot of men marry bullying women and they never stand up to them. And then there's something about the woman that maybe wants the man to stand up to them. I don't know.
It's
I've seen
interesting.
it.
Some
So
deep
she
psychology there.
apparently, I was just reading today, and I mean, it sounds like I just read this garbage like I'm some, but it's like the headlines that pop out at you. You can't really avoid them. But it said, before meeting Megan, Harry found wokeness exhausting, like most people do. Even the woke are sick of woke.
I gotta tell you, I live most of a lot of my life. I live. I don't live a lot of my life in English, right? So I live a lot of my life in French and in Spanish. And most of the people I'm around, if you try and explain some of these concepts to, they don't even really understand some of these things, some of these wokeness stuff. Fanny sent me this video the other day. It was in Spanish. It was going around on Instagram in Spanish about, and she was all like, "Oh my God." And she said it was from the Vancouver School Board, how they were telling little kids about how they could be trans and homosexual and all this kind of stuff. And she was just like, what the hell? Like, she just couldn't understand what any, like, it didn't, the whole thing was so strange to her. Like, just in the sense of, why would you do that with a little kid? Like, it's a little
Yeah,
kid, right? It's kind
yeah,
of like it's a child. Just let it, you can make jokes about stuff like that, but you don't try and present these things as though they're, cognizant. So I hope that I hope that maybe some of this woke stuff is just going to sort of fade away over time, and maybe,
I feel like it is.
um,
I feel like it is. It's burning itself out a little bit. But then again, I thought it started to appear when I was in university in the late
political
80s,
political
and
correctness, right? That's
I thought it was
yeah.
gonna. I thought it wouldn't last,
I
and
think it
here we
did
are.
peter out. I think it did sort of go on the back burner for a
And then it
number of years.
came back
Yeah,
with
that's
a
what it feels like.
force.
It feels like it kind of in this century it's come back stronger. I don't know why, because it feels like it was like maybe 20 years ago it was not as big as it was 10 years before that somehow.
Oh,
Like
and
sort of
speaking of the other cultures, though, because you were saying that you live your life in French and Spanish, I've been told that the French don't really have much use at all for this wokeness stuff, which is
well,
interesting because they kind of invented it.
yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, if just going back to our Me Too conversation, you may remember when the Me Too thing broke that a group of this is European French people, feminists.
Right.
Yeah, different
Yeah.
from here in Quebec. These are very
Yeah, of
different types of
course, of course. I
francophones.
didn't mean to
Yeah,
conflate
no,
those
I
two.
understand. I know you know the difference. Just to make that clear to our listeners that, and then of course there's Belgium, which is something different again. I have a very good friend who's Congolese, and they have contacts in Belgium, and that's quite different from France. But a group of leading European French feminists published this letter. Do you remember this?
No.
Talking about it was after the Me Too thing, and they were basically making this point that we need to be very careful with all this stuff because as much as we think Harvey Weinstein, and I think we should add Bill Clinton to that list,
Sure,
are
yeah.
horrible sexual predators who prey on women and do these
Yeah.
things. we don't want to live in a world where we can't flirt with men and have
Yeah.
sexuality in public, like have times when maybe we're going to be vulnerable, where, you know, like there's, how much of sexuality is going to occur between men and women in public spaces that is not consummated, right? So how much, when you go around and you're buying coffee, and how much of that is going to occur before there's actual sexual, you know, maybe somebody hitting on you, or how, you know, and then how much of that is a sexual aggression, or, you know, it's really, and these French feminists were basically saying, we don't want to live in a world where we can't actually feel as women with men in public without worrying about, you know, thinking about, you know, filing charges for assault or these kinds of things. I don't know if that, I'm not being very
Well, it's
articulate
funny you
about it,
should
but
say that. I was just seeing, I saw it the other day. This made me laugh. A letter that appeared, a post that appeared on Reddit. This woman said, what do you think of this situation? I work in this office, and you know, we're like a nice close-knit company, medium size. Well, there's this guy, and I mean, I don't want to, she didn't want to say anything bad about his performance. He does his job, but he talks to all the other guys in the office, but he won't talk to the women in the office. I mean, he'll be polite, he'll answer your question, he's not rude or anything, but it's always strictly work. And often, if we're all going to the bar afterwards for a drink, if he finds out that the girls are going,
you
he'll
won't
opt
go.
out. And me and the other girls are starting to get really creeped out by this. And we're thinking of actually reporting him to HR. And my thought was, okay.
The guy's
So
supposed to do it's.
I know. You report him to HR if he talks to you, and you report him to HR if he doesn't talk to you.
Oh, boy.
And it's like, why don't you just string him up and get it over with? It's like,
his crime
so
seems to be that he has a penis, and he won't
exactly.
like, or something. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out like how exactly, because the message seemed to be, as you described, for men in the workplace, seem to be young men don't really interact at all because it's too, you're right. Just
It's too
just because you might
thorny.
get jammed up, and it's a reasonable, you know, tack to take. Just basically be polite, be nice, answer questions, but don't ask any personal questions. Don't do any, right. And that sounds like that young man was doing that. He was following the mores and the, you know, the rules as he understood them. That's what it sounds like from the way you described it, right?
Well, he's terrified, and somebody said to him, "Look, watch your back. It's really dangerous out there. You know,
Yeah.
you get an accusation against you, your whole career could be destroyed. You wind up uh, um, pricing tin cans at collecting shopping carts at Walmart." And so, what's funny is I have a friend. He's a lawyer, and he was at his law firm one day, and there was a woman that he worked with, and they were old friends, extremely close type people that said anything and everything to one another. And she had said something rather self-deprecating about herself, and he had turned around and said, "Oh, stop it, you're beautiful." And there was another woman sitting there, a colleague, and he didn't know that other woman very well, but because something in his brain said, well, you can't compliment one and leave the other one out, it felt
Oh my
awkward
God.
and not
So he just
equal to him. So he
complimented.
turned around and looked at her and said, "And you're beautiful too." And she complained, and he got written up.
Wow. It's really, I don't know how to deal with all these things, because I look around at the, just this connects to our conversation some time ago about Me Too, where we talked, where you pointed out all these good things that it did. It exposed all this horrible behavior that I'm sure you must have suffered a lot of, men kind of being inappropriate to you when you're younger. I learned recently, for example, that women in bars will go into the woman's bathroom to get away from guys who are leering all over them. That's a thing that some women will do, like young women in a bar. If there's some guy who's like, "Hey, yeah," you know, that the woman's bathroom is kind of a safe space for women. Oh, I got need to go to the bathroom, and that's probably, that never occurred to me because I'm a man. Maybe when I was younger, I might have been that guy who's trying to hit on the girl. You know, I'm like the drunken guy trying to, you know, right? But it
I
just,
doubt that.
well, I don't know, but who knows? But I wasn't very good at that kind of thing when I was younger. But But anyway, it just occurred to me that that women, that's a very minor form of suffering, but it is a form of suffering, I think, for if you're a woman and you're out and you're just with your friends or something, and there's right, and there's some guy sort
Oh,
of
I
leering
suffer
on you,
so
and
badly at all the men that are throwing themselves at me. It's the suffering is just incredible. I'm just kidding. 57 years old. I don't even remember what it's like. Okay, I have a funny story.
well, you
This was
look
like
beautiful, Liz. I hope I can give you that compliment.
I'm right getting you written. I'm going to HR
Yeah.
right now. Okay, 10 years ago, it was my son's birthday, and a friend of ours who's Arsenal insane. And he comes over and I got a present for him. And it was like an Arsenal soccer scarf. And it had those little pylons that soccer people like to use. And there was some other Arsenal stuff in there. And the next day, it was a cold day. I was going out and I just grabbed that scarf to wear. It looked a little cozy, tied
Okay.
around my neck. I was going out into the world. I was off to work, and um, I was getting so many guys checking me out that
What's
it
that about?
started. Well, I actually just gave away the punchline there, but it was crazy. And it was like Kramer's Kavorka, you know?
Oh,
I had the Kavorka. And
yeah.
I was like, it's been a long time since this has happened. Like,
Where the like men are hitting on me like all the time when I'm going around.
staring at me, like
Yeah.
turning and rubbernecking. And then I'm standing in Starbucks and I get my coffee and I put some sugar in my coffee. And there's a guy, young guy, handsome looking guy. And oh my God, he's walking toward me. And I start to get nervous and I'm shaking. And he walks up to me and he goes, and I think, what is going on with me? And he looks at me and he goes, so you're an Arsenal fan? It's like, what? Huh? What? Arsenal? Oh, yeah, the scarf. Yes. I don't
Oh
even
my
know the
God.
first thing about soccer. Not even the first
Well,
thing.
look, maybe all those other guys were just looking at how beautiful you look.
No, they were looking at the Arsenal scarf.
I
They
don't.
were all soccer
Well,
fans.
okay.
No, I know.
Let me
I
state that.
went out the next day without the scarf. There were no heads
All right.
turning.
Why
None.
don't I
Zero.
try and pay you another compliment? If I was walking down the street and I saw you, I would turn around and look because you look
Oh,
nice.
that's
It's true.
nice.
It's true. You
Thank
really do.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so let's get back to the article as we move towards closing. Towards the end of the article, you use this cartoon, which is probably my favorite cartoon in the
I
whole.
love that one
It
too.
is just it was published in like the New Yorker like in the 1960s or something, or the 70s or something. I don't know. It's really old, and many people have seen it. And just to describe it, it's a very basically drawn cartoon with this, it's got this artist guy who's got sort of like a ponytail and he's holding a paintbrush and he's standing there. And there's another, he's facing a guy who's very sort of, it's all basically very simply drawn cartoon stickmen, basically. And the guy he's facing has like a little suit on, and he's got no hair, he's got really short hair, like he's very business guy. He's wearing a suit, and he's very stiff looking. And the artist looks sort of hip, like he's sort of slouched over. It looks really cool. And then there's a painting that the artist has next to him with the business guy on it. The business guy is being painted on the painting, and it says "fucking ass ho," and then there's a space, and the artist says, "Can I have a grant, please, so I can finish my art?" Right. So the implication is the poor business dude is like, kind of standing there, and it's sort of like whatever he says. If he says, "Yeah, sure, here, take the money," then he's going to be the fucking asshole, right? Of course, because then the artist is going to finish.
Can't win.
And if he says no, it's going back to this thing about being written up, whether you don't, right? Like you're going to be written up no matter what you do. If you say no, then you're the fucking asshole who wouldn't give you, and you hate art. And just, when I read your article, it was very interesting because I've loved that cartoon for at least 10 years or longer. And I've always pictured that guy with the suit on as Stephen Harper, and the artist as someone at the NFB or someone at CBC who's like, "Oh, Stephen Harper's a Nazi. Oh, can he please, Mr. Harper, could you give us some more grant money? You're a Nazi, right?" And and so it was always like this sort of, and Stephen Harper being this kind of sort of like dour right-wing Albertan guy, blah blah blah. He can't win. But you made this case that's very interesting, that the the establishment people, like the fucking assholes, so to speak, are all these Hollywood kind of people now, right? And so I wondered if you could, like, in other words, the people going to get the grant money or whatever, they're not going to kind of the Stephen Harpers, they're going to the Bonos and
Yeah.
the Al Gores and the Madonnas and all these kind of international kind of political Sean Penn type people, right? I wonder if you could just flesh that out a little bit, because it's kind of hard for me to put those things together. Because how is Sean Penn like Stephen Harper, or how is
Well, what's kind of interesting, yeah, about how the the questions of what defines establishment. But I think what has always been the case is anybody who's in a corporate boardroom, anybody who has a lot of power and a lot of money, they don't want to be seen as an ogre. They don't want to be seen as somebody who tortures livestock. They don't want to be somebody who's ending the world as we know it. Like, what does your daddy do? Oh, he
it's
works
an
for
oil company?
Exxon.
Yeah.
And they don't want to be seen in a bad light. And so this is where you get this concept of corporate responsibility, which of course is good. Corporations should be responsible. At the same time, don't responsible yourself into bankruptcy. Also,
Don't be cynical about it. Also, don't
and
be kowtowed into. Don't be threatened into. I wonder if some of that is just responding to threats in some senses. I don't know if that makes any sense.
well, also, I mean, and also be honest about what it is that you're doing. Like, you're not here to save the world. You're here to make some money, and there you sort of end up with a very thorny relationship between the establishment and artists, or the establishment and activists, the establishment and the daughter she's just spent the whole day in school having her brain washed with concepts of climate crisis and um, gender and race and critical race theory.
Yeah.
So, but there's somebody who's paying the bills for the whole thing, and to understand that this is a mutually beneficial relationship. This oil man needs a nice painting in his lobby, wants it to be cool. He wants to be cool. He wants to be liked. He wants to be understood. But at the end of the day, be honest, you're just there. You're just there to pay for all of this. And what's interesting is who which countries wind up having the best environmental record.
Yeah.
These are countries with
Rich countries.
successful, rich countries,
Yeah.
because they have the money to fix the problems and to have the cleanest scrubbers. And
So poor countries need to get rich so they can do that. And the way they're going to get rich is to use fossil fuels. Right. I mean,
yeah,
anyone who doesn't understand that fossil fuels are necessary to help the people of the Congo and the people of Brazil and the people, to get better off, doesn't understand anything about how development works. Right.
well, they don't want the Congo to get
That's
rich.
part of it, is a paternalistic, almost a colonial attitude that,
Oh
the
yeah.
Congolese are not entitled to have air conditioning or something like that. Right.
No, the Congolese, you get your children to mine the cobalt
right.
so we
Yeah.
can virtue
Right.
signal with our
With our
electric
cell phones,
car.
yeah, with our
Yeah.
electric cars and our iPhones, but we don't want those kids in the Congo having air conditioning and their own vehicles to
No,
drive.
UNICEF will come in and put a solar panel on their roof.
Yeah, yeah. It's very colonial, that treatment of the third world by especially the World Economic Forum European consensus, more than it is in North America. It's more of a European thing, is so paternalistic and colonial. It just, the Klaus Schwab type thing of, we're going to tell the world what to do and how to, we need to go and make renewables in Latin America and Africa. It's like, why don't you, why don't you start with yourself? Right? Well, why are you telling everybody else to use less energy when why don't you just deal with what's good for you, and I'll do me. And maybe there are some kids in the Congo, if they're a little better off, they're the next Albert Einstein if they can get better education and have more access. Like, really? I mean, you know how much human potential there must be in the world in poor
Oh
countries?
God.
I'm saying
They
where
don't
the
care.
problem
The
is,
globalists don't care about Africa one bit. What would be the best for Africa is all of those globalists got in that pod that they built for after the apocalypse
just
and just pray that you don't wind up beside Hillary Clinton and just go. Just go
fly
to
into
your
outer
lair.
space. Except,
Yeah,
yeah,
or New Zealand. I think they're headed for New Zealand, but it's
perfect.
like
Perfect.
there.
That's far away as they can go without going to Antarctica. Sounds right to me, and that would be great. They can stay down there. Just sounds right. But yeah, I don't know how to think about that. I guess this funny. You called it a plutocracy. What did you call it? Hang on a minute. I noted it down. Punditocracy, but these no, you didn't use that word. Actually, I may have used that, but these Hollywood elites are kind of the new they're kind of the new oil company executives in a certain sense. Isn't that what you were saying, or did I misunderstand?
Oh, what I said was that Madonna, who was uh, paying tribute to all of these young creatives who have picked up her torch of rebellion. And all I could say is, who are you kidding? There is no rebellion. All of the corporations who are paying the bills for this, Hollywood, all institutions, every last one of them, they're on the same progressive page as she is. They
Right.
share all of her same political ideas, including her idea to blow up a Trump occupied White House. Remember that?
Yeah, that's pretty wild. You mentioned that in the article. I did not know about that. That was quite a shocking revelation, that to make a threat to assassinate or to it's just incredible. I mean, if that had
Well,
happened
he hadn't even been in he'd only just been inaugurated, and it was like give the guy a chance.
there were a number of
Honestly,
things. There was the Kathy Griffin thing where she was holding his severed head. Do you remember that one?
yeah,
Trump's
I
severed
do.
head. I mean, look, these are freedom of expression. As far as I'm concerned, Madonna has the right to say that. Kathy Griffin has the right to do that. The real question is,
Every once in a while, they want to pretend like they're fair, that they're playing a fair game. So they did cancel Kathy Griffin over that
did they?
severed.
Yeah.
They did. I think she
Interesting.
lost her gig with CNN. But
Hmm.
that was just, of course, like that was just sacrificing a child to the angry woke gods, right? Every once in a while, throw it in there. It looks like we're fair, but they're not fair. They're liars and
Yeah.
hypocrites and demanding apologies. And
Well, one of the things, speaking of that, the kind of being unfair, is this thing going back to that cartoon. I mean, that cartoon, what that effectively is doing is putting a person in an impossible situation. And I see the same thing just with the phrase Black Lives Matter. How is a person going to oppose that without looking like a racist? Right? The thing
yeah,
is designed in
well, you
such
have
a
to have
way.
courage. You got to
Right.
have
So
a lot of courage.
to criticize Black Lives Matter is very dangerous, because it's like, what, you're against black people? Like, because it immediately puts people in this situation where if someone's not paying a lot of attention to a lot of racial politics or whatever, then somehow a criticism of it is sort of like, well, are you on the side of the KKK? Like, what, like it's kind of like it creates this cleavage, the same way that guy in the cartoon is just basically, he's putting the guy in a position where it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. So just the phrase Black Lives Matter, I think, should almost be abolished, because it's too obvious. I mean, why is it even a statement? I mean, what if, does anybody think Black lives don't matter? Like, who doesn't think Black lives matter? Show me that. Okay,
No,
that person's a racist, right? Who doesn't think that lives of other people in the world don't matter? Like some group of people, Jewish lives, indigenous Canadians, whatever, white people, whatever the group is, just pick your group.
pygmy lives.
The pygmies, yeah, right. I hadn't thought of them in a while.
Well,
But
uh, one of the funniest things I saw through the whole 2020 brouhaha was a woman on TikTok, and she said, "My Russian dad asked me, 'What is all this Black Lives Matter business about?' And I explained it to him, and he stared at me quizzically and snapped, 'No lives matter.'"
Yeah, exactly. Boy, that's great, right? So the Russian version is like completely turned on its head, right? Like nobody matters, and just get back to your suffering and go back to trying to, yeah. That's,
The thing about Black Lives Matter, like it goes to show you how you're so careful about what you say, that the woke left has created an environment of fear, and all of a sudden you're considered like a dangerous person if you say, "Well, I'm confused because BLM raised so much money and I'm not seeing many fruits of all of that fundraising." And also, um, some of the higher ups of this organization have been buying themselves really lavish homes,
yeah.
and nobody has been able to really account for the money. And uh, so I just think that there's a lot of corruption there. At the same time, I'm not inside it. I don't know what it's like to be a black person in a white world. I don't. So I feel like I could just politely let that one go. Like,
Well, what you're speaking
but
to,
where you have to speak up,
right?
where it is your duty, is with this trans business,
Yeah.
because that
Children, yeah.
involves the abuse of children, and abusing a child is a crime against humanity. And if you can't speak up about a crime against humanity, you are a useless person. You've got to speak up and be really honest about that and say no. And that's why I think Matt
Just to
Walsh
be
of the
clear,
Daily Wire is
yeah,
a hero.
Matt Walsh and What is a Woman and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, what you're talking about people under the age of 18 who have been
Not just that, not just that.
yeah,
You cannot erase womanhood. You
yeah,
cannot, not everybody can walk around and declare themselves a woman. You
yeah,
can't do that. That is, that doesn't belong to you. It's not yours to take.
yeah,
So no, it's like, now, if I'm a respectful and polite person, if you are dressed like a woman and you call yourself a woman and you've got a woman's name, I'll use all your pronouns and everything. I'm not going to go for non-binary and say they and them and be grammatically incorrect. I'm just not going to do that. Sam Smith is a he. I'm not calling him they. I'm not going to do it. But I'll be polite. If you've gone to all of the trouble to turn yourself into a woman, when you are charged with a crime and you're going to prison and
yeah,
you think, well, the woman's prison is a whole lot nicer, still ain't great, but it's better. I'm a woman now. And
yeah,
when I get in there, I'll see who I can rape.
yeah.
No, no,
There's
that
something,
is insanity.
yeah. Well, what you're speaking, we were speaking about how Madonna was this big, powerful feminist icon. I think she was, and we both agreed on that. But she's only a feminist icon if we agree that a female is a female, to be different from a male, right? It's like she can't be. I can't call myself a woman and call myself a female icon, or like I can't do that. Maybe I could become a male icon. I don't know. That's a separate thing that I could try and do. But what this really speaks to, when I talk about this in my classes a lot, is that it's the question of identity. It divides into two categories, basically. One category is things that you adopt and change through your life, right? So if you, over time, maybe you learn another language and you immigrate to another country and you integrate into that, so you become someone. My brother became an American citizen. I am an adopted Quebecois in some senses, right? I am a trilingual Montrealer. I wasn't born that way, but I am, and I have been for 30 or 25 years or whatever it is. Okay. But then there's other parts of your identity that are built into you, right? Where you were born, you just can't change that, wherever you were born.
Mm.
And most cases, the color of your skin and your group identity that you were born into, that's fairly, for a lot of people, that's fairly fixed. And male
Baked
or
in.
female. Huh?
Yeah.
What?
Baked in.
It's fairly, and basically male and female is on that category. I think people just are refusing to accept some of those built-in categories. They want everything to be things that we can do and choose, which I understand that, because I love the idea of people being empowered to become new things, go and do new things. That's a great thing about life. You can go off and reinvent yourself in a new society. You can do things, you can learn how to do stuff and all that. But if you have a penis, it's pretty it's pretty hard, to turn it into a vagina. Physically, it can be done, but it doesn't work very well. And the reverse is also very, very hard.
No, it's mutilation.
It's mutilation.
Mutilation.
Really. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you're
But
following.
what you're talking about, I mean, I agree with you. It's a beautiful thing to, uh, to what's the word?
Adopt.
Yeah, sure. Of course, I'm from Calgary and I live in
Toronto.
Urbane Toronto, where everybody is
Are you
very
a proud
educated.
Torontonian?
Talk about Noam Chomsky.
Right.
So no, I don't feel like a Torontonian at all. I still have Calgary in my blood.
Right.
And I'm very much kind of a Calgarian. I think more like Calgarians. It's like, can so and so come to the party? I'm like, shit, yeah, get her over here. It's like in Toronto, it's like, well, we only got the invitation today, so I'm going to decline it because obviously we were last minute. Like, why? It sounds fun. So, but
so this choosing of
about
identity, like what can you choose and what can you
so
not choose? Right?
the trans thing, I think at least the environment that we've come to experience. We've seen gender dysphoria for a long time.
Yeah, it's a real thing. It really
it's a
exists.
real thing.
Yeah,
it's an absolutely real thing. And then a lot of it comes from childhood sexual trauma. Sometimes
right? Yeah,
that's autogynephilia. So, but then you have people, a man who just like, he wants to go about his life as a woman. But now we live in an environment where we're supposed to go along with it to the extent where we're supposed to say, Elliot Page, who was Ellen Page, suddenly on Wikipedia, all references to Elliot Page, the female, have been excised, erased, 1984 style.
We are probably dead naming her. Like we're actually,
I called
right? Technically, you just dead
him.
named Elliot Page. It's Elliot Page, right? So saying Ellen Page is to commit not a crime, but a sin, a kind of a modern day, something like that, right? It's like a sin.
So the catechism around it, the language, the orthodoxy around it, that derives from postmodernism, and all of the ideology around that, all the French thinkers. The fundamental, the premise of it is everything that is normal must appear weird, and everything that is weird must appear normal. And so, like, you've got a guy who looks like a rugby player suddenly wearing a
bonnet or whatever,
and a pair of kitten mules, and he's wearing a dress, and he looks weird. But we're supposed to all say, well, that's normal. It's normal. Yeah. Your tattoos and your bull ring and your studs and like.
This brings us back to what's transgressive. Like, if everything is normal, there's no such thing as transgressive.
Well, that's why. That is why you can't be transgressive anymore, because the Frankfurt School has turned the whole thing on its head.
Yeah.
Turned the whole world upside down. There's Satan on the Grammy stage. I don't care. Satan, whatever.
We're all just shrugging our shoulders, going, okay, whatever. Right? Nobody cares.
So, and everything. And so suddenly, having children is weird, right? Having children is weird in our postmodern world. You tell somebody I'm having my 6th child, they will look at you like you have 2 heads. What is wrong with you? Where when we were growing up, the Catholics down the street, they had 12 kids, Wasn't weird. It was a lot. Wasn't weird though. I mean, now everything, having children is weird. Getting married is weird. Everything that's normal
Everything
appears
was
weird. Everything that's
traditional
weird.
is transgressive. So this is like Johnny Rotten, John Lydon from the Sex Pistols,
Sure
supporting
do.
Donald Trump and he said at one point, he said to be a punk rocker in the 21st century is to be right wing. He
Yeah.
pointed this out. He said, he said like now I've always been. I haven't changed.
Here's what. Okay. Here's how Sam Smith could have been truly transgressive. He should have worn a MAGA hat.
Yeah, that's true.
Sworn his fealty to Donald Trump. Maybe. Oh, definitely the golden showers. A golden shower from Satan. Maybe perform an abortion on
Yeah,
a tranny. Like it.
yeah.
it
Also, like, well, what's the point? I mean, like the other thing about it that sort of I find that's strange is the Oscars. In one of your other articles I read, where you were comparing the Oscars of the 2020s to the Oscars of the 1960s, and you had these images of Steve McQueen and what's her name from Breakfast at Tiffany's,
Audrey Hepburn.
Audrey Hepburn wearing this backless dress, and they're also just there's sort of this beauty. They're all very kind of, there's this gallantry and this incredible pageantry. And then you compared it to these ridiculous dresses they're wearing. So it makes me think, like, can't they, to be transgressive, maybe they could just get back to putting on a beautiful production where
I
people
think we're
all
starting to
look
see
good
that.
and they're all, something like
I
that
think we're
might be
starting to
transgressive.
see that.
Really?
Especially, yeah. In fashion, we're seeing it because there's a great example was I also wrote about this in a Substack on. There was this trend that's come out and you're seeing it everywhere still. It's called Barbie core, and it's this Pier Paolo Picciolini designer, and he works for the House of Valentino, and he came out with a show early last year, and it was called Pink, and it was an absolute like the whole entire thing had a whiff of Chanel number 5 about it. It was startling bright pinks, and it was feminine. There were feathers and beads, and it was so then, and it got dubbed Barbiecore, and then Barbiecore became this big thing. And what was interesting through this year, at the last year at the Emmys, and then some other event, you were seeing all types of Barbiecore dresses, very princessy, very pink with twill and satin and silk, and
But
it
for real
it
women, though.
for real women, and it
Women who
looked like,
actually that I would look at and go, I like the look of her, not Dylan Mulvaney or
oh
some.
no, no,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
were
like that,
stunningly
you
beautiful.
know.
So what was interesting was this Barbiecore look comes out, and I thought that's interesting because these are pretty dark times, right? And this was like a breath of fresh air. It was a lot like what the look that Christian Dior came out with post-war. After World War II, it was
Interesting.
incredibly optimistic time. It was like, let's turn a page. Let's move forward with
Yeah.
all of the technological advancements and
After
and
all that suffering in the 30s and 40s, right?
exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we're still really in the thick of like cascading global crises, and along comes this look where it's like shocking, it's stunning, it's feminine, it's
Positive.
beautiful. It
Beautiful.
reminded me a
Yeah.
lot, that show. My first thought in my mind was the what's the famous lingerie line called again? The
Oh, Victoria's Secret?
Victoria's Secret.
Right.
So
Yeah.
what had happened to Victoria's Secret in a couple years back was first of all, it had a couple of sex scandals. The corporation had a reputation for being a bit handsy, a bit gross, a bit sexist. Its CEO had a bit of a too close relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and
Uh-oh.
their sales had started to flatten out a bit. And what did they do? They went woke, and they hired Megan Rapinoe as a spokesperson. They started to have plus size models, and they started to have trans models, and they started to have, and then they killed off their annual Angels show, which was this extravaganza of femininity and princessy, and what happened to Victoria's Secret? What was the success of their new woke
Total.
thumbs down.
So nobody liked it. It didn't work, is what you're saying.
No, it didn't work.
Yeah.
And so what was interesting is along comes this Barbiecore, which is a breath of fresh air. It was so normal. It was so retro. It was so feminine.
Yeah.
And look what's happened at Balenciaga. Very interesting. They've got this his name's Chivasalia. Anyway, he's like their creative head. And the Balenciaga stuff this past year has been like the set designer from the movie Brazil. Like he had one fashion show in mud. Then he had a fashion show in a blizzard. You couldn't
Wow.
identify the gender of any of the models. It was all dystopian warcore. It was all black and depressing. Oh, there was a purse that looked like a bag of garbage. Like it was a giant, it was so Blade Runner and it was
Blade Runner.
ludicrous.
Yeah,
And
interesting.
then what did he cap the year off with? Not him, but Balenciaga with this super creepy ad campaign, a gift edit. And they had all these teddy bears in bondage.
Oh
And the
yeah, I remember this.
children were holding the teddy bears in bondage. And there was Val, and there was like all this Satanist imagery. And and they got smoked for it. Like the last thing I read, I mean, I'm sure Balenciaga will have food on the table tomorrow and they'll live to see
Yeah, they'll
another
do
day, but
fine.
70% decline in sales. It's all bargain basement. It lost all of its hip, cool
Interesting.
luster. And put that side by side with Gucci. Gucci has gone not Barbiecore, but super optimistic
Back
mid
to
20th
basics.
century.
Back to
Mm-hmm.
basics, right?
And just
Back
like
to
a little
what
bit of a
works,
yes.
right?
And this warcore by comparison looks abysmal and depressing,
Yeah.
and it's like, who wants that?
Well,
Just
that's a really, this is a great way to end, is to look at, like, because this, I like to end on a positive note. So
I
yeah,
know,
yeah.
I
So
know.
what you're saying is
Should
great.
play a Leslie Gore song on Sunshine,
Yeah.
Lollipops, and Rainbows.
What you're saying is really cool, that there could be a turn towards, it's not that you're saying that we should, go back to some sort of 50s morality or something
Well,
like that.
you can't.
Right. No one can. But just what you're saying is certain things in fashion work well. Certain things look good on a male body and certain things look good on a female body. Kind of like how music, 4/4 time just works well. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the music, there's certain things in music that just work well, that if you try and do dissonant atonal stuff, it's sort of like it can do something a little bit interesting for a little bit. But if you try and base a whole kind of popular music on John Cage or whatever, this kind of whatever it is, like this sort of 30 seconds of silence, these kinds of things that they did to sort of really shake things up, that won't work as the basis for a long-term sustainable form of music. The same way that all the
Sorry,
stuff you're describing won't work.
I'm being beckoned.
The same thing that it won't
Sorry.
work. So I think it's great that you pointed out that we're turning a corner for the positive, and I want to just thank you again for.
Okay, instead of playing, okay, on the as the song that goes out of this, instead of playing Leslie Gore's Sunshine, Lollipops, Rainbows, can you play some really dissonant uh modern music like
No, yeah, no, well, I don't think so. So listen, thanks again. It's always a great pleasure, and just
It's my pleasure.
yeah.
My pleasure.
All right, and I really love reading your columns. I mean, they're just that they really, and also, by the way, your column is going to be published in the April 1st edition of Arts and Opinion.
Oh,
Rob
fantastic.
Lewis publishes your stuff all the time. He loves your work as well. Says it's great.
I
Yeah,
love him. That's
yeah.
nice.
He's in Mexico. He lives in Mexico in the winter, but he told me that he did the April 1st one. So if people can find it, Arts and Opinion, April 1st, you'll be able to see Liz's work if you can't find it on Substack.
Well,
And
tell him that I'm so happy he likes my work and I graciously accept a week at his Mexico home as payment. Okay.
I
Can
think
you
it'll be
pass that
sleeping on
message
his
along?
floor.
I'll
Hey,
take it.
you're
I don't
going to
care.
Jamaica. Aren't you going to Jamaica next
Yeah,
week?
off to Jamaica next week.
Man, that is so cool. Okay, maybe we should do a podcast about Jamaica.
Absolutely. I'd love to. Okay. Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Jason.
Liz. Thanks again. See you next
Talk to
time.
you soon. Take care. Bye.
thank you for listening to today's guest on the Mega Blast podcast. I've been your host, Jason McDonald. This podcast is brought to you by Arts and Opinion, an online journal, which is also available in the Permanent Archives of Canada. Visit us online at artsandopinion.com.